I was mildly curious to watch the new Superman movie. Like most people, I was feeling a bit tired of Marvel, so trying some DC sounded like a nice change. Thought it would be more of a functional movie just to introduce the audience to the new DC cinematic universe, but surprisingly, it ended up teaching me the meaning of Hope Core. Hi everyone, I'm Pedro Luferson and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies, TV, games and books. And yeah, today we're talking about Superman. This is going to be a rather short video because what I want to say about the movie and my opinions are quite concise, but I still think they are worth saying. Plus I like the illustration I made and I wanted to share it. I think I should first tell my story with the character. The thing is, I never watched a Superman movie before, never ever. I have seen one or two animated DC movies with Superman and watched all 4 seasons of Young Justice, which had Superman as a character, but never the main focus. Of course I knew the basics of his origin story because it's all around pop culture, but I had never actually watched a Superman movie or animated TV show with him as the main character. I'm actually more familiar with the satire of Superman, Homelander. I watched 3 seasons of The Boys before realizing it's not my cup of tea. So you could argue that the closest thing I was familiar with about Superman was the character made to be basically his moral opposite. Selfish, egocentric, violent, just straight up evil. So when I went to watch the Superman movie, I didn't have super high expectations aside from the whole James Gunn and a new beginning for the superhero movies thing. I had no previous deep relationships with the character and I was just expecting to be positively surprised. And I'm happy to say I was. I like the movie. It's no masterpiece that would change the superhero genre forever, but it's still a good superhero movie, especially considering the past few years. But for me, aside from being a good movie in general, it's very special because it made me feel something that I don't often get from a movie in this particular way. The simplicity of the core message for me is incredibly motivating. Throughout the whole movie, Superman choices are questioned. Interfering with international conflicts, refusing to kill a kaiju, turning himself in just to save a dog, he receives criticism from basically everyone. And one of the best dialogues in the whole movie is between Lois and Clark at the very beginning. She explains all the reasons why stopping a war was a reckless, naive, and irresponsible decision and that he didn't take into consideration the possible repercussions of his actions, bombarding him with her razor-sharp journalistic criticism. But then Clark screams that people are going to die. She stopped for a second and realized that she couldn't counter-argue that, so she quickly changed the topic. That simply and quickly ended the debate, giving us what the Superman is all about in a nutshell. And combining with previous interactions and throughout the rest of the movie, we have a pretty clear idea of who the Superman is. Someone who legitimately cares and fights for the people who need him. He doesn't do it for the fame or the glory, but because he really thinks it's the right thing to do. And because he believes that his mission on this planet is to do good. In case you didn't know, Superman's symbols means hope and Krypton, his home planet, which the movie doesn't even bother to tell us. It doesn't care to tell us the deep meaning behind the S. In fact, the movie makes sure to tell us that this cosmic savior purpose was not even intentional in this universe. His purpose was to become a murderer and a dictator. When have I heard that before? Anyways. As Clark's Earth Dad says, the message Clark's parents sent him only has a function as long as Clark wants it to have. Clark might have come this far because the message inspired him, but it did make who he is. If we assume that he found the message and the Fortress of Solitude near the time he became Superman, he was about 27 years old. And at the time when the movie takes place, he has been a hero for 3 years. It's not his first day, he already knows who he is and why he does what he does. And of course, he has to come to terms with the origin he formerly was so attached and proud of to realize that a space-given destiny isn't important. Who he is and what he chooses to do is what really matters. And who he is, in my opinion, is incredibly motivating. He is the most powerful superhero on Earth, the strongest and the most resistant. But of course, no power on itself makes a difference. But Clark as a person, on the other hand, is legitimately and deeply kind, caring, gentle, empathetic, positive and silly. He as a character doesn't become a good person as part of his arc. He's a good person throughout the whole movie. And in the beginning of the movie, he might sound honestly somewhat naive and clueless, but I think that's what most characters of the movie get wrong. He's not naive, he's just present. While everyone else is worried about public relationships or endless future consequences of every movement they make, Clark worries about what is right and must be done right now in the safest way possible. He takes one step at a time and only cares about the next right thing that must be done. He turns himself in just so he can save a dog, he asks everyone if they're okay upon saving them, does his best to not kill a fire-breathing kaiju unless it's absolutely necessary, and he gets out of his way just to save a squirrel. The way I see it, his Kryptonian powers are completely outshined by his profoundly human identity. His simplicity and kindness are often frowned upon, but these are the things that make him who he is. It's what keeps him going, and this is how he fights. Which reminds me of another amazing character who fights just like him. Waymond Wang from Everything Everywhere All at Once. He is silly, quirky, and the kindest person possible. Just like Superman, his characteristics are looked down upon and flat out ignored. People see them as weaknesses, as nothing worth the trouble. But at the end, those character traits are what keep them going and motivate the others around them to do the same. They pull us from the pit of our own lives to allow us to do something that can be deeply difficult but unite us as a society, and that is the ability to care. To expose ourselves and care about the others. For both Waymond and Clark, acting like this is not a happy-go-lucky, naive way to see things, it's a very intentional way of acting. In a world where everyone is overwhelmed minding their own business and almost deliberately numbing themselves from anything or anyone outside of their lives, caring is something very vulnerable to do, therefore something very brave to do. Well, you can even say that caring is punk rock. Superman himself doesn't change that much throughout the movie, but he changes the people around him. He reminds them what being a hero means and what caring about others means. His bright blue suit with red underwear over the pants was a very intentional choice to make him look silly, approachable and welcoming, just like his actual personality. He doesn't want to distance himself from other people because his heroism is about how close he is to humanity. Not just humanity as a species, but humanity as a concept of union, empathy and kindness. And if I can be honest and very cheesy, this movie changed me a little bit. It's not often that you can say that a movie inspired you to become a better person, even if that means just remembering the name of the guy selling food on the streets. And in a world where the ones in power are often cynical and terrible people dictating our fates to fulfill their selfish purposes, having a character who is the most powerful being on earth and truly the kindest and most caring not because of a cosmic mission, but because of who he is and who he chooses to be, that fills me with hope. For this drawing, I had a pretty clear image of what I wanted it to be. I think most people would agree that the moment Clark saves the squirrel is really symbolic of his character. Like most of the things he does, it screams who he is and how much he actually cares. This illustration in particular was pretty easy to draw. Not pretty easy, but it was very chill. The pose itself wasn't anything crazy, and I think the details I paid most attention to were his eyes, his expression looking at the squirrel, and the color of his suit. It was really fun to use very saturated and bright colors to give like this almost childish vibe, but still very welcoming and cozy in a way. I also liked very much like the shapes I give with the lights and the shadows, like this very square and straight lines that I actually use often in my drawings, but in this in particular I wanted to give more of intention to it, like not just to make a style and shapes and etc, but also to like shape the drawing as a whole to have more depth, like literal 3D depth in a way. I think my favorite part of this drawing is the simplicity of how relatively easy it was to make, but also the shapes and the colors. I'm very happy how it turned out. And that's it for today. This was a rather short video, but I wanted to share both my perspective on the movie and this drawing. Don't forget to like, comment, share this video and subscribe to see more. I see you in the next video. Bye!